The 2023 CrossFit Games season is almost here. We are just hours away from the live announcement of 23.1 at the Caja Magica in Madrid, Spain. But first, we have some storylines to cover. Welcome inside the Talking Elite Fitness studio, everyone, for our very first studio show. Tommy Marquez alongside Annie Sakamoto. Sean Woodland's on the road, so we are graced with Annie's presence today. We are still unpacking the studio a little bit, exploring the space, so you're gonna see it morph as the season goes along. But first, we wanna cover all the major storylines heading into this season. And Annie, first, big picture, what really stands out when you think about 2023?
Well, when I think about the Open and the fact that the season's already upon us, as a participant, I'm thinking, don't I have a couple more weeks to get a little more fitness in?
You and me both.
But as a fan of the sport, I can't remember the last time we started a season where all three divisions, that being the men's division, the women's division, and the team division, really felt truly up for grabs. And that's not to say that I don't think that Justin could three-peat this year, but I think that there's quite a few guys that are hot on his heels and could really kind of throw a kink in his bid for the third season.
Yeah, I think it's a testament just to the depth of field across all three divisions as a whole. We're going to be joined in just a moment by our friends Lauren Kalil and Brian Friend, who will be joining us from the road. But first, we're going to dive into one of the biggest announcements that just dropped today. PRVN Fitness out of CrossFit East Nashville. They just announced some new additions to their roster for the 2023 season. Taking a look at this list of athletes, certainly some accomplished ones there, but towards the bottom, the individual athletes, Olivia Kerstetter, Sasha Nieves, and Thuri Helgadottir, a nice mixture of female athletes that could make a splash this year. Now, Annie, we just saw that list, and there's no Tia competing for PRVN this year, but based on this list and who they already have, it looks like they're building something big in Nashville.
Definitely, and I love what the three ladies that you mentioned represent when it comes to CrossFit. You know, you have Olivia Kerstetter, who is the teen that just won 2 times in a row, is now said that she's gonna enter the individual division. Another one of these young ladies that's making a bid very early on to be a competitive individual athlete. She got 16th at Rogue with a lot of heavy hitters. And then you have on the opposite side of that, Thuri Helgadottir, 7-time games athlete. She's done really well, but we've never seen her on the podium. Is proven what Thuri needs to get her on top of the podium. And then somebody like Sasha Nieves, who we have seen at the games twice now, South American athlete. So she kind of represents the up and coming international stars that we want to see have more of a presence at the games.
Looks like they're trying to make an impact, certainly on a multitude of levels. And one way they will certainly make an immediate impact is through the Affiliate Cup in the team division, because earlier on Monday, they announced their roster for the PRVN Fitness team that will be trying to take down the vacant crown left behind Mayhem Freedom. Here are the 4 athletes that will make up that roster. Andrea Nisler, Taylor Williamson, 2-time Affiliate Cup champions, be joined by a little bit of a wild card there in Tim Paulson, the patron saint of full send and 6-time CrossFit Games individual athlete, joins the PRVN roster alongside Tola Moriquinho. We're gonna cut to the chase here, Annie. In your opinion, does this roster immediately throw them in the title contention?
Well, if we're talking about Andrea Nisler and Taylor Williamson, in my opinion, we are talking about 2 of the very best team female athletes this sport has ever seen. So, you know, we always say that really your team comes down to your female athletes, their strength, their performance, and that is what can make or break a team. So having those 2 ladies on it lends itself well to another championship for those girls. Tola Moriquinho, he's a 4-time Games team athlete. We saw him compete last year with Andy Thorsdottir, Lauren Fisher, and Con Porter. They did well, not well enough to be on the podium, but obviously he's a great player. So like you said, the only unknown is 6-time individual athlete, Tim Paulson. Now, we have seen Tim Paulson absolutely sell out for himself.
Oh, yeah.
I have no doubt he will sell out for his team. But what will the chemistry be like between these 4 athletes? And we will see soon enough.
As you mentioned, the women really kind of set the standard on the team side of things. And one thing that should be noted is Taylor Williamson. She's married to Nick Johnson, the CEO of PRVN Fitness. Previously, she was commuting to Cookeville for the Mayhem team. Now she gets to stay in Nashville with her husband, and she's out of PA school. So 2 things that bode well for how well her performance could improve this coming season as well. So, and for more on some of the major moves made by the PRVN Fitness crew, we're going to send things out to East Nashville and Lauren Kalil, who has been on site with the PRVN crew all week.
Tommy, Annie, it has been a busy couple of days here in Nashville, Tennessee, as the Proven Group gets ready to take on the 2023 CrossFit Games season. With additional athletes here on site, they typically do their strength work individually, and it's not until they get to their Metcon piece that they're starting to work together as a training camp. I caught up with Nick Johnson, one of the head coaches here, to talk about how those additional athletes came to be.
It's been a real big progression for us over the last couple years. We obviously started with Brooke, Will, a couple other athletes that were kind of the foundation of the brand. We didn't know where we wanted to go with that. We knew we wanted to offer a really good product from a coaching standpoint at a very high level. And now it's been our job to kind of scale that up. With the athletes that we've announced and the new athletes that we have with the team, it's just been a really good fit, especially with having Tia step away to where we can kind of bring in the people that will fit what we're trying to do to a T. So what we believe in at Proven is really just giving it all you have all year long, whether that's training for a specific event, whether that's training for life like Tia is now. The people that fit what we believe in best are going to be the ones that we want here every day, and that's who we are bringing on with the new athletes.
And if adding to their individual roster wasn't enough, for the first time ever, Proven is also creating a team. Something that Nick said he's really excited to be part of is they kind of learn how the differences between coaching individuals and coaching a team all works out. Obviously, Andrea Nisler and Taylor Williamson, they historically are used to being on a team together and also winning gold. But even with the addition of 2 other men on their team, they say that the goal remains the same.
Andrea and I have obviously been together for years, so that was kind of the backbone, I guess. From there, we started brainstorming what guys are available, who has team experience, and obviously Tola popped to the top of the list. So we reached out to him, and he was interested right away. So that was a really good fit right off the bat. From there, it took a couple months to kind of, vet people and figure out who would be a good mix and who was interested in going teams, and also just to wait for the rules to come out as far as affiliation, because that's obviously a huge influence on like who is willing to move and who's not willing to move and all the rules. We reached out to Tim, he was at the top of our list, and luckily he was really interested and it was a really good fit. So we're really excited about that. Our goal is to win the CrossFit Games. Easy.
Some of the new on-site athletes, like Olivia Kerstetter, aren't on-site yet, but they do plan to be here frequently to train with the group throughout the year. And somebody like Olivia, who technically could go teen again this year, she has a big decision on the line, but it might just be the perfect timing to start here at Proven.
Yeah, so I think this is something exciting for our brand as well, for Proven to expand our stable, so to speak, and I mean that politely as well. To have such a raw young talent wanting to work with us, with our team, is exciting for us. But regarding team and team, that's a discussion we haven't spoken yet because the relationship's so new. We've just been doing a lot of testing protocols, putting a lot of the foundation in place, structure-wise, for programming and getting that relationship sorted. And then the next evolution or the next step is then to have those discussions. And I'm excited to be a part of that conversation for sure, and I'd love her input. But yeah, that's definitely a good question and something I'm excited for as well.
What an exciting time it is to see a camp just 2 years in the making, now growing with these powerhouse athletes. Don't expect to see them on the leaderboard for 23.1 just yet, but come Friday, you might be able to see their scores. Back to you, Tommy and Annie.
Thanks, Lauren. And if you want more exclusive content coming out of the Proven Camp, Lauren is there all weekend and she'll be posting stuff to our IG and YouTube feeds as well, so be on the lookout. And of course, check out our time cap episode that published yesterday. You get all your fitness news in under 60 seconds. Moving on in the team competition now, and one team that is surely going to factor into the overall leaderboard when things shake out at the games, that's Team Oslo Navy Blue. They're the back-to-back silver medalists at the CrossFit Games. We have a full interview dropping with them tomorrow on Friday, and we caught up with them earlier to speak about what their team will look like in 2023.
So it's going to be the same 4 people, and hopefully in better shape, better individual shape, because we've changed our focus a little bit this year. Last year we started training as a team in early January. We had a couple of sessions a week doing the worm, doing synchronized stuff from January. But this year we've teamed up with Joachim Rygg and Kristin Holte from the Krieger training. And now we have specific individual focus, I think, until mid-April, until we start doing team stuff again.
Be sure to check out the full interview dropping on our podcast channel on Friday. And Annie, Oslo, they're the reigning silver medalists at the games. The only team in front of them is gone now. How do you figure they are going to factor into the equation this year?
Well, I mean, first of all, Tommy, I think Oslo Navy Blue is probably one of the most underrated and overlooked teams that has ever stood on the podium twice. I think last year they actually wore the leader jersey maybe 5 of the events they had it on. Like we saw, they're going to be training their individual weaknesses this season, but that doesn't discredit the chemistry that they have as a team. Having competed for so many competitions and years together, they just know each other so well. They're actually one of the few true affiliate teams where they train together in the same affiliate on a daily basis. So I think they very much need to be in the conversation. And if you haven't been paying attention to them, it's time to start paying attention.
Yeah, most definitely. And one thing that should be noted too is that Norway recognizes functional fitness as a sport in their country. So they do get funding, and those athletes do get paid by the government to pursue that full-time as a profession. So switching gears now over to the individual side of things, the one division that we do have the champion coming back, that is the men's division. Justin Medeiros is the guy everyone is going to be chasing, and here are my top 5 athletes on the men's side that I think are going to be trying to dethrone him. Patrick Vellner, obviously one of the most accomplished athletes in the sport. Krennikov, Gerard, the 2 guys that joined Medeiros on the podium last year. And then Sam Quant, Jeffrey Adler, 2 sneaky picks that are slowly creeping up on the leaderboard. Now, Annie, these are the next 5 guys on the games leaderboard, but I think it's safe to say what we saw from them in the offseason has kind of solidified their place there.
Definitely, these are solid picks, Tommy. You know, in the 2 Canadians, Patrick Vellner and Jeffrey Adler. So Vellner, obviously a 4-time games podium athlete. He was 4th at Rogue this year. He won the Wadapalooza team competition with his fellow Canadian, Jeffrey Adler, who was 3rd at Rogue this year, 5th at the games this year. So like you said, both of those gentlemen, a ton of experience and kind of some momentum going into this 2023 season. Samuel Quant, he returns to the games in 2022, finishes 4th, so proves that that 2020 year was not a fluke, and then he was actually 8th in Rogue. So again, another athlete that has a lot of forward momentum. And then 2 athletes who I think are very much going to be gunning for the top spot on that podium in Roman Krennikov. He gets 2nd place the first time we see him live at the games. He gets 5th place at Rogue. He gets 2nd place at Wadapalooza. Obviously just so happy to finally be competing amongst all of these gentlemen. And then of course, Ricky Gerard. He gets 3rd at the games this year. He wins Wadapalooza. Had a little fluke. I think he was either sick or had an injury at Rogue, but otherwise a great performance. So like you said, there's a lot of guys that are chomping at the bit to take that top podium spot this year.
Yeah, Justin Medeiros is going to have his work cut out for him if he wants to three-peat, and it's certainly going to be one of the deepest fields on the men's side we have ever seen. But switching over to the women's side now, and the top athletes that are going to be chasing the title, now that Tia-Claire Toomey is no longer around. You have Mal O'Brien, you have Laura Horvath, 2 women that joined her on the podium last year. But you also have some newcomers, people rejoining the fray, and some up-and-coming athletes like our Rookie of the Year. Danielle Brandon finished 1 spot off the podium last year. But Annie, looking at this list of athletes, who really stands out on the women's side?
Well, you know, I love the pick of Danielle Brandon. So I think, again, she's somebody who has a ton of forward momentum right now. She was 4th at the games this past year, her best finish yet. She's changed training camp. She's over at Brute now, and that may be just the edge that she needs to get herself on the podium. And then an athlete like Emma Lawson, she's part of this new young gun wave of athletes that we're seeing. And, you know, she was 6th at the games. She wore that leader jersey for a few events this year, and she was 3rd at Rogue. So I think she's trying to be like Mal. She's trying to make that jump into the podium contention at the games for sure. Laura Horvath, obviously tried and true. She's a 3-time podium athlete. She was, like you said, 3rd at the games this year, and then won Rogue. She's the only female outside of Tia to win the Rogue Invitational. She has a ton of forward momentum, and if you're following her at all on socials, she looks good this year. And you can never rule out Annie T. You know, we've seen her kind of take a year off because of becoming a mother, and then come back and get herself back on the podium. We saw last year she tried team, and I actually think she's pretty frustrated with how things went. I think she is not satisfied, and she is coming back with a vengeance to get herself back on the podium. You cannot rule out Annie T. And then Mal O'Brien. I think for me, she's probably top of the list. I remember seeing Sammy at the Rogue Invitational, and I said, no Mal this year? And Sammy said she has one focus and one focus only, and that is to win the CrossFit Games. And I have no doubt that she has the potential to do it.
Yeah, and to do so, being able to go toe-to-toe with a champion like Annie Thorsdottir certainly would be a feather in the cap as well. We're gonna take a deeper dive into our top contenders here, and we're gonna welcome in the official friend of the show, Brian Friend, armed with his very own power rankings that he has published out on social media. You can check those out now over on his Instagram. And Brian, can you put this into perspective a little bit, these top contenders and the big picture context of how this ranking came to be?
Yeah, definitely, Tommy. The power rankings is kind of a big picture idea that I had to intro the fans of the competitive CrossFit season into the landscape of competitors for this year. So coming into the Open, I tried my best to only focus on athletes who will be doing the individual CrossFit competitive season this year, and then it narrowed it down to 100. It's obviously a big task to take on, but hopefully it gives people a good big picture of who to look for this year, athletes who could potentially break through. And as you get closer to the top of the list, we're really starting to narrow down on top 10, podium, and potential games champions, which is the focus here. So those athletes that you've identified on the men's side as being the biggest challengers to two-time defending champ Justin Medeiros are mostly the same guys that I'm looking at. I think that Roman Krennikov and Ricky Garrard have very clearly established themselves as being legitimate title threats. Pat Vellner has had an impressive offseason with 2 podium finishes at major competitions and should still be in the mix. And Jeff Adler and Sam Quant have just shown some really good consistency in terms of improvement throughout their career and are definitely guys that you don't want to sleep on. I think in addition to those men, there's a few others that could be throwing their hat in the ring this year for top 5 and possibly podium finishes. It'll be tough, but I do like Jason Hopper this season. I think that he made a big stride forward in year 2, and I expect him to take another step forward in year 3. Everything we've seen from Matt Fraser as a coach is suggestive of the fact that he is very good at finding the places that his athletes can fine-tune things to continue to move forward and up the leaderboard in this case. So he's probably the biggest name I would throw into the mix of the ones you guys have already included.
And then on the women's side, how do your rankings factor in the fact that there are some new athletes jumping into the mix, and we have a tremendously deep women's field?
Yeah, the women's competition is going to be ripe with new blood this year. I think there are up to 20 athletes of different levels who did not compete in the individual game season last year and will be attempting to qualify for the games this year. And there's probably a half dozen or so of them that you all know, and a few of those that will make it and will have an impact on the leaderboard. I think you guys have already mentioned the biggest one, Annie Thorsdottir. You know, everything we've seen from her as an individual competitor these last 2 years is podium finishes. And in my mind, she's in the mix with the Mallory O'Briens and Laura Horvath as the top podium contenders. Behind that is where things start to get really sticky. There are a lot of women who are coming up in the sport. Most of them are pretty young. Most of them are pretty good. And in addition to the ones that you've already named, the 2 that I really have my eye on to see if the changes they've made this offseason can have the desired effect that they want at the games are Haley Adams and Gabriella Magawa. I think that the changes she's made are a little bit smaller. Basically, she's taken this offseason to address the elephant in the room, which is her top end strength relative to the best women in the world. If she's able to move a little bit up the leaderboard on those 2 or 3 events at the games, she might be able to find herself back in the top 5, knocking on the podium door. Gabby's taken a bigger risk. She's left a training environment in Spain that she had a lot of success with, moved back home to Poland, Christoph, her boyfriend, is now coaching her in some capacity, and she's trying to find a little bit more balance in her life instead of being so focused on competition preparation for the season all the time. I do think there's a chance for both of them to take a step forward, but the top end of the women's field is so tough that if they don't, it doesn't necessarily mean they made bad decisions this offseason. It's just that's how good the women's field is right now.
Yeah, the women's field is stacked, no doubt. But Brian, let's zoom out a little bit. Can you give us our big picture outlook on the season as a whole?
Yeah, I think all things considered, the 2023 season is going to be one of the more exciting ones we've ever seen. In all three of the top divisions, men, women, and teams, there's the chance that we're going to have a new champion this year. In two of those divisions, the reigning champ is not coming back. And although Justin Medeiros is yet to be beat, the field is creeping ever closer. So I think if you're looking at the end of the season, excitement is going to be at an all-time high in terms of spanning those three divisions. And in the meantime, with the Open kicking off, Adrian Bosman taking control of the entire competitive season in terms of a programming perspective, the new worldwide ranking system, new strength of field allocations, a little bit different feel for semifinals. I think that at every stage of this season, we're going to see an improvement from last year. And as a fan of the sport, an analyst of the sport, or anyone who's even just doing the Open for fun, I hope that's something that people are excited for.
Love the sentiment, Brian. Thanks as always for sharing your insight and taking the time to join us today. Always love talking shop and catching up with you, brother.
Thanks, Tommy. Happy to be here.
So Annie, we've talked a lot about athletes that will be competing this season. One absence in Tia Toomey, but two other athletes that just recently announced they will be foregoing this season. Cara Saunders, Lucy Campbell, they're unfortunately not going to take the floor this year. You talked a little bit about the impact of these two absences.
Yeah, I mean, Lucy Campbell had such a great rookie year last year. She finished 16th, but won 2 events at the CrossFit Games. She is arguably the best female swimmer that we saw at the games thus far. I believe she's about 30th in the worldwide ranking, so that's a huge loss as far as not having her in the mix. And then Cara Saunders, she has competed in every single Open since it started. She is tried and true, I think, one of the best female athletes consistently across the years that we have seen. And it's just a bummer. She's ranked 10th worldwide in the rankings. So just a real bummer to see two really high-level athletes not in the mix this year. Whatever their reasons are, we wish them the best, and just know that we'll miss you, and we'll be here next year if you're here with us.
Definitely want to double down on those well wishes, Annie. And it should be noted that Cara Saunders is sitting out for personal reasons. She didn't elaborate much more on Instagram, but said she might share it later. And Lucy Campbell is sitting out the season to rest up a wrist injury. She hopes to get back to full strength. So hopefully we'll get to see him in 2024. Now you may have noticed that my partner in crime, Sean Woodland, is not here, so we get to hang out with Annie because Sean is over in Madrid at the Caja Magica getting ready for the 23.1 Live Open announcement. So we're actually going to toss things out to Spain and Sean to get a little bit more on the vibe of the venue.
Thanks, Tommy. Here at the Caja Magica, a venue that should be familiar to CrossFit fans. It has hosted a couple of regionals and an invitational, but this will be the first time that it hosts an open announcement. And Thursday night here is going to be a blast. We're going to have 4 local athletes throwing down, along with the elite athletes, Bjorn Carl Gudmundsson, Lazar Djukic, Laura Horvath, and Gabriella Magawa. And I saw Adrian Bosman walking around earlier. I went fishing for hints, and all he would tell me was this. He thinks everybody should be able to give this one a go, RX. So we'll have to see what that means, but looking forward to Thursday night. Things go down 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern here at the Caja Magica in the live announcement of 23.1.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate the attempt on getting some intel, but in lieu of any hints on 23.1 from Adrian Bosman, I think we should put our money where our mouth is and make some picks. I think we should go movement we think is going to show up, men's and women's matchup winner, and the overall winner for the announcement for the best score. So I guess with that, I'll lead things off. I'm going to go with Lazar Djukic for the men's pairing. I think a lot of people might be on BKG as the winner, so I'm going to give Lazar the nod here. I'm going to zig when everybody zags. I'm also going to go with Laura Horvath. I think, maybe a little extra motivation knowing that she can win with Tia being gone this year and just coming out of the gate swinging in that first open announcement. And she had a strong showing in an open announcement last year. I think Laura's going to win overall as well. I think when she gets a groove pitch, she's one of the best in the world, and I think this could be a good one for her as well. And then as far as movement goes, You know what, this is gonna be self-serving. I think I'm gonna go double unders because they've been in the first week of the Open 3 times. I love double unders. It's one of my favorite movements overall. So I'm gonna pray for something that comes down the pipe for me that works well as well. So yeah, those are my picks. And you know what, we got picks from the road as well. So we're gonna send things over to Brian and Lauren for their choices.
Ooh, it is prediction time. You know, we have King BKG, who has rightfully so earned that title, but I think Lazar Jukic is going to give him a run for his money this season, and that's why for 23.1, I am picking Lazar. As for Gabby versus Laura, I've had my eye on Gabby for the past 2 to 3 years, and I definitely think she's going to be a contender and an athlete that we talk about all year long, but I still think Laura is going to take home that W this week. As for if all 4 of these athletes go head-to-head for the 23.1 announcement, I'm going to have to go with Laura. It's the women that are going to take it home for all the marbles. When it comes to now predicting what movements we're going to see, historically I've never guessed right, so I guess I have nothing to lose here. But I'm thinking that there's going to be some kind of wall walk and rowing combination, maybe going up the ladder like we saw 2 years ago with increasing wall walks per round, maybe not as aggressive and only going up by 2 per set, and then calories on the rower going up by 5 cals. We'll see what happens.
All right. I think that we're going to see 23.1, a single arm dumbbell thruster. You'll have to do it with the right and the left at different points in the workout, but that's my prediction for pretty low barrier to entry movement. Everyone can do fun variation on something that obviously we're used to seeing every year in the thruster. As far as the matchups, male to male, female to female, I'm going to go with the 2 athletes that have been a clean sweep on 0.1 workouts the last 3 seasons. So I'm going to take BKG and Gabby Magawa. And in terms of the overall winner, I'm going to take the one who's been the most consistent in terms of open performances in recent years, which is Gabby. So those are my picks.
Love the picks. Annie, we're saving the best for last. Time to lay it on the line. Who you got?
All right, male winner. I love that you kind of chose the underdog in Lazar, but I'm gonna have to go BKG. I do feel like he's the safe bet there.
All right.
Females, I'm gonna go Horvath as well, and I am gonna go Horvath as well for the overall winner.
There we go.
And for movement, we've never seen a kettlebell in the equipment list, and it's there this year. And so I'm gonna go with a kettlebell snatch.
Oh.
We've seen a lot of dumbbell snatch, right?
Oof.
So I think it's gonna shift over to a kettlebell snatch this year.
All right, I'm gonna have to prep my wrists and elbows now just to get ready for it. Oh man, I love the picks. We'll certainly have to see how that plays out. But before we get going, remember, we do have an interview dropping with Oslo Navy Blue on Friday. And again, look out on the Talking Elite Fitness Instagram and YouTube pages. We'll be dropping some content from Lauren being out on the road with the Proven Fitness crew. And elsewhere around the fitness world, we got the tactical games this weekend. In a couple weekends, we have the Arnold Sports Festival that's going on March 3rd through the 5th. You'll get strongman, strongwoman, weightlifting, powerlifting, arm wrestling, and more. We'll be on the road for that, dropping some content too. And then of course, 23.1, that's up next. Our guy Sean Woodland, Chase Ingram, Lauren Smith, they'll be on the call. Before we get going, Annie, final thoughts?
I am so excited. I think this is my favorite time of the year, and don't tell my family, maybe even more so than Christmas. It's just there, you know,
Okay.
You get to start with everybody. As an affiliate owner, I love what it brings out in my community. As an athlete, obviously, I hate the way it makes my palms sweat, but I love the accomplishment that I feel when I'm done. And then as a fan of the sport, as an analyst, it's just so fun to watch the progression over the season and to see all the different stages of competition. So,
no doubt. It's what the Open's all about.
Yep.
I think, you know, it just really ties the community together as a whole. That's going to do it for us here in the Talking Elite Fitness studio. Best of luck in 23.1, and we'll be back again to preview week number 2.